Welcome back to our last one. This one, I'm kind of throwing it in there because I'm leaning towards maybe seeing this on the midterm in a convoluted long take-home form. We'll see. So here we have profit, cost, and revenue, along with markups and discounts. So I included the markups and discounts because sometimes Alex will pull these up. I don't totally like the way these questions are usually phrased because there's some ambiguity about which way does the markup go, which can make things confusing. All right. But profit, cost, and revenue, very applicable thing. Like you could totally apply it to a lemonade stand. So revenue is the money coming in, often from selling something like lemonade or a lawn mowing service. Cost is the price of producing the good or service and any fixed costs. So things like rent, the electricity, paying your employees is actually usually considered a fixed cost because whether money comes in the door or goes out the door or not, you still got to pay your people. And then profit is the money you have left after you pay those bills, the costs. So we get that from the money coming in minus the money we had to send out will be profit. So markups and discounts. So this is, given this original thing, mark it up by a certain percentage. What's the new price? Because markups and discounts, it's always price. We actually have a lovely little example here with it. It's a two-step one, which is weird, so that's why I copied it in here. But any percent change question, which is what markups and discounts are, you have whatever your starting price is, and then you take the percent change of that starting price and add that, and that percent change could be negative, so you could end up subtracting, so you get a smaller number, and then that will be your new price. So since original price shows up twice, like you could factor it out as a term and like make the formula look a little different. Yeah. I kind of like it this way because sometimes they'll ask what is the markup, and they're asking for what is this difference in price? How much did you mark it up by is however many dollars. I mean, you could say 20%, but usually they give you 20% and they're asking what was the amount of money or what was the new price is usually the better, I think the better question. All right, so let's check out this quasi-realistic question. Suppose that a bookstore buys a textbook from the publisher for $80. All right, at what price should the bookstore mark the textbook so that it may be offered at a discount of 10%, but still give the bookstore a 35% profit on the $80 investment? Okay, so we need to figure out a 35% profit on the $80 investment, and then we need to figure out what would the bigger price be, so when I take 10% of that, I get back to that price I figured out in the first step. Very weird. So first we want to figure out what is a 35% profit margin or profit on the $80. So in other words, what do I want to see as my after the store discount? What's the price? So to figure that out, it literally is just going to multiply. To figure out what is 0.35 of 80. Because they did say a 35% profit on the $80 investment. So that is the way we're going to apply it. Whoop, wrong button. Calculator. 0.35 times 80. And I get 28. You may be thinking, well, that's not the new price. You're right. That is not the new price. That is the markup. That was just doing the part in blue here. I still got to add it to the original price. So the price we want to see is going to be 80 plus 28, which is 108. So this is what I want the price to be after a 10% discount. All right. Now here's where it gets a little weird. So up here I had my original price, the percent change times the original price. I want this to be the result after the discount. So this is not the original price. This is the result. So I'm asking, what do I have to call the original price so that when I take off a 10% discount of that price, it equals 108. So this one has, like you can sneak it in as a decimal even, 1.00, which is very bad handwriting. All right, so 1.00 minus 0.10. So you can kind of think 100 minus 10 would be 90, 2 decimal places, or just use the calculator. I do a lot of mental math problems like in my spare time. I'm weird. So yeah, I tend to do a lot more math in my head. That doesn't mean I expect you guys to or think you should. If I'm actually doing anything official, I'll pull out the calculator. I know, which does beg the question, is teaching us not official? No, it is, but if I make a mistake in front of y'all, it's a learning opportunity, not a reason to be embarrassed. So it's real, it's just way less risk. For me, for y'all, math class can still be a not comfortable experience, I know. I try to make it more fun. All right, so 108 divided by 0.90 is 120. There we go. So if I say this book is supposed to be priced at $120, but I'm going to offer it to you at a 10% discount. I'm going to punch it up on my calculator. 120 times 0.10 tells me 12. I take that off the 120. I get 108. That's the price to you. It's a good discount. We just don't talk about the profit margin that he's making. That's not the bad one. The bad one is when you go to the flea market and they say, for you, my friend, I will give you 40% off. And then they punch it up in the calculator and they only took 12% off and they show you, see, here it is. I can do math. That ain't 40%, dude. So, not everyone is honest. It's annoying. All right. So that's how we figured out the markup and discount. Now, what I'm thinking about for the take-home part of the test is giving you a very large problem, but I kind of need a subject for it. So I mentioned lemonade stand, might be lemonade stand, might be making trail mix to sell, but something where the kind of fixed costs are pretty low. It might end up being the lemonade stand, actually. Those are pretty small numbers, so won't be too bad, but I'm going to kind of get you guys to figure out lots of different steps. All right. Again, if you have questions, please come find me in office hours. And we are done.